Nearly 30 years after Tupac Shakur was shot on the Las Vegas Strip, a retired police officer has taken the witness stand and revealed what he says were some of Tupac's last known words to police. And according to his testimony, Tupac was still conscious and able to speak as officers desperately tried to find out who had just shot him. But Tupac would not give them a name. Instead, the officer testified that Tupac responded with words to the effect of, "No, we'll take care of it." Now, that testimony has been presented to the jury deciding whether Dwayne "Kef" D. Davis is legally responsible for Tupac Shakur's murder. But before we get into exactly what the officer told the jury, here is an important disclaimer. Before we begin, this video is for news reporting and commentary. The murder trial of Dwayne "Kef" D. Davis in connection with the 1996 killing of Tupac Shakur is ongoing. The information presented in this video includes statements and allegations made during court proceedings, witness testimony, evidence presented in court, and publicly reported information about the case. Prosecutors allege that Davis was involved in planning and facilitating the attack that resulted in Tupac Shakur's death. Davis has pleaded not guilty and disputes the allegations against him. Statements or allegations discussed in this report should not be interpreted as established facts unless specifically identified as such. Dwayne Davis is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. Now, let's get into what the jury heard. Retired Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Officer Gary Dale took the witness stand and transported jurors back to the night of September 7, 1996. Dale wasn't someone who became involved in this investigation days or weeks later. He was there that night. And incredibly, his encounter with Tupac actually began before the shooting. Dale testified that he and another officer stopped the BMW carrying Tupac and Death Row Records co-founder Marion Suge Knight because the vehicle did not have a license plate. The officers ultimately allowed them to leave with a warning. Approximately 10 minutes later, Dale and other officers responded to reports of a shooting. And when Dale arrived, he encountered the same BMW. But this time, everything had changed. Suge Knight was outside the vehicle and injured. Tupac was being removed from the BMW by emergency medical personnel. Dale testified that Knight was telling officers to take care of Tupac. This is where the testimony becomes especially powerful. Dale got into the ambulance with Tupac as emergency personnel rushed him toward the hospital. According to Dale, Tupac was still conscious. He was still talking. And Dale realized that he had an opportunity to ask the question investigators desperately needed answered. "Who shot you?" Dale testified that he repeatedly tried to convince Tupac to identify his attackers. But Tupac would not give him a name. According to Dale's testimony, Tupac responded with words to the effect of, "No, we'll take care of it." Dale acknowledged that he could not remember every word exactly after nearly 3 decades, but testified that Tupac repeated a similar response. And when prosecutors asked whether that was all he was able to get from Tupac, Dale said he couldn't get him to talk any further about the identity of his attackers. Think about the circumstances. Tupac had just been shot multiple times. He was being rushed through Las Vegas in an ambulance. Police were trying to determine who had opened fire. And according to the officer sitting with him, Tupac would not identify anyone. Instead, the message Dale remembers hearing was essentially, "We'll take care of it." For almost 30 years, there have been countless stories, documentaries, books, and theories about what happened during Tupac's final days. Now, a man who was actually inside that ambulance has testified under oath about what he remembers Tupac saying. But it's important to understand what this testimony does and does not establish. This testimony does not identify Tupac's shooter. In fact, it establishes something very different. According to Dale, Tupac did not provide police with the name of the person who shot him during that ambulance ride. That could become relevant as jurors evaluate an investigation that remained unresolved for decades. Prosecutors now allege that KFD helped orchestrate the retaliatory attack following the confrontation between Tupac's entourage and Davis's nephew, Orlando Anderson, inside the MGM Grand earlier that evening. Prosecutors are not alleging that KFD personally fired the fatal shots. They contend that he participated in the plan, obtained or supplied the weapon, and was inside the Cadillac involved in the shooting. The defense disputes those allegations. And this is where the trial becomes even more complicated. While Tupac apparently did not identify his attacker to Officer Dale, prosecutors now have something they did not have from Tupac himself. Years of statements from KFD. Jurors have heard portions of a 2008 police interview in which Davis discussed the shooting. In that recording, Davis described being inside the white Cadillac and identified his nephew, Orlando Anderson, as the person who fired the shots. Prosecutors are using Davis's previous statements along with other testimony and evidence to build their case. But the defense is attacking the credibility of those statements. Davis's attorneys argue that he exaggerated or fabricated stories about Tupac's murder for attention, publicity, and financial gain. So the jury is being asked to consider two very different questions. What actually happened on September 7, 1996? And can KFD's own words nearly 3 decades later be trusted? Tupac Shakur was only 25 years old when he was shot. He survived for 6 days before dying on September 13, 1996. His killing became one of the most infamous unsolved murders in music history. And for decades, one question continued to follow this case. Who killed Tupac Shakur? Now, for the first time, a jury is hearing evidence in a murder trial connected to his death. They're hearing from officers who were there. They're seeing evidence from the night of the shooting. They're hearing recordings made years later. And they're being asked to determine whether prosecutors can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Dwayne KFD Davis was criminally responsible for Tupac's murder. This case is far from over. More witnesses are expected to testify. More recordings and evidence are expected to be presented. And KFD's previous statements are becoming a major focus of the prosecution's case. Black Community News will continue following this trial and bringing you the major developments as they happen. But now, we want to hear from you. What do you make of Tupac's last known words to police? Why do you think Tupac refused to identify his attackers when Officer Dale questioned him? And nearly 30 years later, do you believe prosecutors will finally be able to prove who was legally responsible for Tupac Shakur's murder? Let us know what you think in the comments. Follow Black Community News for continuing coverage of the Tupac Shakur murder trial and other breaking stories affecting our community.